Hello and welcome to our weekly credit chat that we host every single Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube and on Twitter. Credit chat is a time when we get together to talk about credit and money issues that matter to all of us. You know, every week we cover a different personal finance topic, and today we're talking about ways parents and teachers can help our kids become financially savvy. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our awesome panel. First, we have Steve and Annette Economides, and they are New York Times best-selling authors and founders of MoneySmartFamily.com. We're going to be actually giving away a couple of copies of their books during today's tweet chat, and super excited to be giving away their book, The Money Smart Family System. Steve and Annette, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here. So happy
to be here.
We also have Laura Levine. She's the president of Jumpstart Coalition, and she'll be tweeting at LL Levine and also at National Jumpstart. Super excited to have Laura. Laura, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Debbi King. She's a personal finance writer. She's an author. She's a speaker. You'll find her tweeting at Debbi King. Debbi has been very active in our community for a very long time and always sharing valuable insights on money for our community. So Debbi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
As always, we have Rod Griffin. He's our director of public education for Experian, and you'll find him tweeting at Rod_Griffin. And behind the scenes, who's doing it all on Twitter is Christina Roman. She's our social media specialist, and she'll be tweeting from our Experian US Twitter handle. And my name is Mike Delgado. I'm the senior manager of social here at Experian, and I'll be tweeting at Mike Delgado. Want to let you know that there are a bunch of different ways for you to join us today. First, you can join us on Twitter, and if you'd like us to see your tweets, we encourage you to use the Credit Chat hashtag. There's already a very good discussion that I'm looking at right now. And just want to remind you that if you have a question for our panel, you have a comment, we would love to see your thoughts, and we welcome your thoughts in our credit chat. So just make sure that you use the credit chat hashtag on Twitter. And if you prefer to use our special Experian credit chat tweet chat room, you can go to our short URL, which is ex.pn/tweetchat. And if you do that, you'll be brought into a special room where you'll just see the conversation around credit chat. Sometimes when you go to Twitter, you know, there could be a lot of conversation happening that's not really relevant to the credit chat discussion. So if you want to just see the credit chat conversation, just go to ex.pn/tweetchat. And if you're watching here on YouTube and would like to ask a question to the panel or post a comment, we encourage you to click on that little link that's on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. It says be part of the conversation. And if you do that, you'll be brought into a special YouTube room where you can actually thumbs up the comments that are being said by our panelists. And also, you can go ahead and type in your questions or your comments for them. So we encourage you to use that be part of the conversation widget. Some people get worried that they click on that, they're automatically going to be on video. Don't worry, you're not going to be on video. It just allows you to be able to thumbs up things that are being said as well as ask questions to our panelists. So I'll have that open. If I see any questions that you type in, we'll make sure to ask our panel. All right, so we are now done with this long introduction. Steve and Annette, Rod, Laura, Debbi, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm super excited to have you all share your thoughts on how parents and teachers can raise money-smart kids. Steve and Annette, I wanted to just ask you guys a question. You know, money was one of those topics in our family that wasn't really discussed. My mom and dad kind of kept those things very, very private. In fact, some of the most private conversations were held in Spanish, so I didn't even know what they were saying, right? So I'm curious about, you know, you go out and you are speaking at conferences, you're talking with a lot of families. I'm curious, how common is it for families to keep those money discussions very, very private?
I think that's very common. I don't think parents realize how intentional they need to be in order to pass the baton of frugal living and financial literacy to their kids. It's not caught by osmosis. It's just not.
We had that experience. We were coaching families. We were managing our money. We were paying off our house. And one night our son came to us and said, "Mom and Dad, when are you going to do financial coaching with me?" And we're going, we were living it, but he wasn't catching it. So we made a very intentional effort to create a system and a kind of an economy within our family so that our kids could start learning that stuff.
And that's really how our Money Smart Kids system got developed.
That's right.
That's wonderful. Debbi, I'm curious about as you were growing up, was money one of those topics that your parents kind of kept close to them, or were they open with money with you?
No, they were very close with me. They're a typical Southern family. Very private, very, prim and proper, if you will, and they didn't talk a lot about it at all. And as well as they had done with their money, I came out of college and within 5-6 years I had $200,000 in debt. And I was smart enough to go to them when I wanted to get out of debt and ask them what they had done, and they shared some, but even then, in that kind of dire, area, they still were a little hesitant, but I never knew what they made. I never knew anything. The only thing they were very open about was tithing, giving that 10% to the church, and that was the only thing that they would tell me save, 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 but never show me the budget, never show me how to do that stuff. So it's very, very important that we teach our kids that. And there is a way to teach it without giving away all your personal information as well.
That's right. Laura, I had a question. Your organization works with so many students in schools, providing financial literacy and education. I'm curious if you guys are seeing a trend in the classroom. Are you noticing that parents are being more open nowadays with money and having those discussions with students, or do you think there needs to be a lot more conversations at home? Oh, Laura, I'm sorry, you're on mute. There we go.
Sorry. Okay. So, obviously, I'm still new to this. Okay. So thank you. Those are good questions. And kind of yes to both of them. We are seeing more parents being more open and having more discussions with their own kids. But there is still so much more that we have to do. And I think one of the things is that while this generation of parents has been more forthcoming in having money discussions with their own family, they also have been a generation that has tended to indulge kids. I'm generalizing, but we've seen a lot of indulgences, and so so we have a lot of work to do.
Laura, you bring up a really good point, and Steve and Annette, I see you nodding your heads about indulging our kids. Can you talk a little bit about this trend, what you guys are seeing? Can you talk to so many families, and how is that helping or hurting?
Well, we have this attitude, and this happened also with parents who grew up in the Depression. They didn't want their kids to have to go through the same experience they did, so they thought they'd give them things. And what happens, I use the weightlifting analogy. I was a competitive gymnast in college, and I got to tell you that my parents didn't do my weightlifting for me. That's not how I made it to the national championships. I had to do the lifting myself. And financially, if we give our kids money, we're essentially letting them live the lifestyle we've earned rather than learning to earn their own lifestyle. And so really, we encourage families to start as young as you can to get kids lifting little financial weights.
But we also say take the money that you're already spending on your kids. Like Laura just said, kids are being indulged. So how often do parents give their kids $20 to go to the mall or pay for movie theaters are expensive today. I'm thinking of all the ways, $150 sneakers and blue jeans. And it's time to start backing ourselves out of that. And you don't want to go cold turkey, especially if you have older kids, but it's time to start saying you have to put some money towards this. So if you've been footing the bill for all of it, say from now on I'm going to foot the bill for half of it, and you have to come up with the other half of the money and find a way to earn it.
We really encourage parents to look at the money they would be spending on their kids and find a way to allow the kids to earn that money. And if they earn it, then they can learn to manage it. That's really the key, is starting them young, managing money.
Thank you, Steve. Laura, one of the very first questions we're going to be tweeting out right now is, what do you wish you knew about money when you were young? I'm really curious about your thoughts on that one.
Oh my goodness, everything. So, I think that I grew up in a family where I was taught to appreciate money, and I was taught an incredible work ethic, especially by my father, but we didn't talk about money. And so my career at Jumpstart is based largely on seeing myself in young people today and saying, okay, so how do I help them know more?
Thank you, Laura. Debbi, I'm curious your thoughts. What is something that you wish you knew early on in life about money?
I just wish that I knew what the definition of debt really was. I always associated it simply with, credit cards or that kind of thing, just not really realizing that that when you go into quote unquote debt, that you're actually reaching into your future for something that you want today. And I wish I had kind of gotten all of that, because my parents were very responsible with credit cards and they could use them and pay them off every month. But then my generation, when we came out, credit cards were a way to get something immediate, and not have to worry about it. And so I didn't really know the difference in that. And so all of a sudden, I was trying to have the life that my parents worked 40-something years to get. I wanted it the first year I graduated out of college. And I just didn't understand all that. And that, to me, is what I try to teach when I reach out to, like, millennials and that kind of thing, is just realizing that it's a process. It's a slow process. But if you do it right, you can end up having everything that you want, and more. But you got to do it right, or you're going to really mess it up.
Steve and Annette, I'm curious, as you're raising your kids and thinking back to things you wish you knew earlier on in life about money, what were some of the key concepts that you kind of started the kids on learning early on?
Well, because we had so many children and it spanned an age range, when we started John at 9 or 10 or 11, Abby wasn't even born yet. And so Abby was the caboose. She was number 5. And so she started, like, at 3 years old, wanting to identify all the coins and running to the payday table with her bank. And
what we did is we put a system together where it was really consistent, because we tried something that wasn't consistent because we didn't want to do allowance. We didn't want to give our kids money just because they were part of the family. We wanted them to learn to work and to earn and to associate working hard with earning more. So what we did is we made every Sunday was payday. And the kids would come and they'd earn points during the week, and on Sunday they would get the reward of their earnings. And it was phenomenal. So Abby, at 3 years old, is seeing all her brothers and sisters around the table getting paid, and she wants to get paid. So this was just natural for her. That's all she's ever known. She just got married this year. She put a budget together for their family. Her mother-in-law is looking at what she's doing going, how do you know how to do this? She said, well, I paid for my own cell phone. I paid for my own car insurance. I know how to budget. I've been doing it since I was a little kid, and I just filed Colin's taxes this week. So she's got it down.
And she's 21.
Wow, that is amazing. So obviously you guys have done a wonderful job of having a lot of money conversations with your kids. I'm curious, what advice do you have for other parents with little ones to kind of take that model that you've done?
It's not about conversations. Conversations are good, but it's about a way to actually live out what you're trying to teach them. It's having a system to get money into their hands on a regular basis, so they can start learning how to spend wisely, how to have a strong work ethic like Laura talked about, how to become frugal and know where to get all the resources, where to get all the things that all their friends have, only get it for 10 cents on the dollar.
Well, you want them to learn to earn what is appropriate for their age. So you don't want a 3-year-old earning $100 a week. They wouldn't know what to do with it. It's not right. So at 3 to 5 years old, our kids are earning $2.50 a week. And that buying power that they have doesn't entitle them to shop at the mall. It doesn't entitle them to buy cell phones at 3 or 5 years old. But it does entitle them to go to a thrift store or to garage sales.
Yes.
And that's where they find bargains that are appropriate for their age. And it works. But we've got to start getting money into their hands as young as possible, because here's a key. And we learned this after we wrote the book, but we aren't raising children. We aren't. We are raising future adults. Mm-hmm. And future adults need to learn to stand financially independent from their parents. We cut the umbilical cord when they're born. We don't cut the financial ties soon enough.
Amen.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, really, truly, it's not even about teaching them. You have to live it yourselves. You have to walk side by side with them. And it sure helps when we're at a thrift store and we find a great bargain for us to get excited, because then our kids think, oh, yeah, this is a fun place. We're at a thrift store. We're hunting for treasure.
That's right.
I'm going to jump in. I think you're. I want to say, I think you're making two key points that we forget. You can't just talk at them, at your children or at the children. You know, it's not just a conversation. It's putting it to action and making it real. And the other thing that I think you're pointing out that a lot of us forget is that we are their role model, and no matter what we say, they see what we do.
Yes.
And we have to show them what to do. And we forget that you know, we can tell them what to do all the time, but our kids watch us and they model their behavior on what we do as much as, if not more than, what we say. And you know, and it's been my experience. We can't forget that.
Yeah. If I could say one quick thing too, it's not always just money examples. I just posted on Twitter. It's life examples too. A 1-year-old can have a fit in the middle of the store or middle of wherever because he didn't get what he wanted. And it might be just sharing a toy. It might not have anything to do with money or a purchase. And you need to teach that kid he can't always have what he wants. And that will translate to money later on, because money is a huge part of our lives. But it's life lessons that you can use. Like, don't overlook those just because there's not a dollar sign attached to it.
You know, what's interesting, Debbie, is we do think of that as money. Because you have to have money to purchase a toy, and delayed gratification is part of our system. We have a wish list where our kids write down what they want to purchase, and some of them have to wait months to get what they want, either because of holidays, waiting for the holidays for somebody else to get that for them, or for them to save money for something. So our kids really, you know, you would be surprised. Money is so insidious. It really is behind so much. But if you can teach your kids that they can have what everybody else has, they're just going to find a different route to get there. Then they don't feel like such freaks. I mean, there are still times when our kids feel different than their friends, but... Sure.
When they buy a car and they pay cash for it, and their friends go, "You don't have a payment?" They feel like a freak. I like that. Our kids went to college and didn't borrow money. And so Abby now is going to graduate in December, and all of her friends say, "Oh, you graduate in December, then the loans payments start." And she goes, "No, we haven't had to borrow any." They go, "You are so weird." That's great.
Laura, I see you nodding your head, especially when talking about the importance of modeling good financial behavior at home. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. You know, and I think that's right, that what we do is more important even than what we say, and what we say is important. So, you know, we have to do this with young kids. But I think it was Steve's example about getting excited about, you know, bargain hunting, and I saw this with my own son, and sort of that sense of pride when he actually bought a poster of Ichiro, the baseball player, at a flea market, and he was so excited that he got a deal. But once they feel that, you know, getting a good deal, saving your money, and getting a bargain, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. This is a fun thing, and you could see he spent his own money and got a good deal, and that's a great jumping off point. And so if they can have a great experience like that, it's a wonderful start for what they're going to learn the rest of their lives. But it really does have to start with the parents, and I say that both professionally and as a parent.
Steve and Annette, when is an appropriate age to begin talking with kids about money? You had mentioned that it's important to start as early as possible. I'm just curious, like, how do you begin having those conversations very early on, or how does that work?
You can start with our Money Smart Kids system at 3 years old, but oftentimes parents haven't done that. They just don't even think about financial education when a child is 3 years old. So
but we want them to start associating working with earning. That's the way our world is set up. So at 3, our kids participated in chores, and because we had payday every Sunday they got a few coins at 3 years old to put in their Minnie Mouse bank. One bank, real simple, no math. As they get older and they can start adding, they can start dividing, they can start doing percentages, then we made it a little more complex because life gets complex as you get older. So then they had give, save, and spend, 10% to give, 20% to save, and 70% to spend.
So from 5 to 8, it was a 3-part compartment bank, and then at 8 years old is when they started on our envelope system.
That's right.
And that's where they were literally adding, subtracting, multiplying. They were doing decimals, percents, and that's where they were adding some stuff. And at 11 years old...
And that's when they started taking their money and saying, I've got $70 in spend. I want to go buy this toy. It was planning, it was saving, it was calculating. It was so many good things.
And at 11 years old, they started buying their own clothes.
Oh, reality just hit.
And so,
Wow.
Our kids have never wanted the $150 sneakers because they knew what it took to earn that,
Right.
and they said, no way.
Oh, we gave them a raise, and at that point they were earning $7.50 a week. And we made a rule, 10% to give, 20% to save. The rest had to be divided in half until you had $100 in your clothing envelope. And they had to go buy their own clothes. It was great. It was practical because if you just make allowance, giving them money that they can spend however they want, how is that related to real life? I mean, I'd love to take my whole paycheck and go blow it on a vacation.
And play with
Wouldn't that
it.
be fun? Buy new computers, buy all kinds of toys. But the truth is, in real life, you've got things you need to pay that aren't fun. You got to buy underwear.
That's right. That's right. You got to buy socks.
Exactly.
that is.
Our kids had everything everybody else had. They even had tuxes. They had evening gowns. And to watch them be excited about finding the deals at a church rummage sale or a school rummage sale or a thrift store or a consignment shop.
Well, Abby at age 16, we were on the Montel Williams show, and they challenged us to go out and buy clothes for the event. And Abby comes out in this drop-dead gorgeous red evening gown that she paid
$25 for.
And she paid for her own money. But, I mean, they have closets full of these clothes that they learned. That's not a problem anymore. That's not an issue because they know they can handle those kind of expenses without blinking their eyes. They've learned from a young age.
Steve and Annette, got a question from Amina here in the Hangout about, you mentioned the Sunday payday, and wondering, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, and it really doesn't have to be Sunday, but it does have to be once a week.
Kids can't go longer than that without having a reward for their work. It's got to be really short term. We used to not do payday. We used to give our kids money for their birthday, or if they did it for Christmas, but it wasn't consistent enough for them to learn to manage it.
But basically, because they could earn 4 points a day and 3 on Saturday because there was no schoolwork to be done, then the points had to be calculated and signed off on every day.
Every morning at breakfast.
Every morning, Dad did that, and then Sunday the points were totaled, and if they could earn 23 on our point system, but if they did an extra something, an extra chore to earn 2 extra points, then they got double pay, which also simulates life out in the real world. The more you give to your job, the more you should get rewarded, okay?
Everybody knows that. We all get bonuses when we do extra
so
stuff.
we picked Sunday as our payday, but it really can be any day of the week that works with your schedule. The important thing is that it is consistent and it is the same day every week.
Right.
Good, Laura.
Oh, if I might add to that, so one of the things that I've said to parents about allowances or about any kind of a payment system is that sometimes it is, people always say, like, well, what is the right age for kids? And I often say that what we really have to do first is make sure that the parents are ready to do this, because if you do set Sunday as payday, the parents have to be committed.
Yes.
To doing it every Sunday. Otherwise, then you're inadvertently sending a message that, well, payment is a little loose,
Right.
And so that's one of the recommendations I have to parents is that if you're going to do this and you pick your day, but you've got to be committed to that day too.
Absolutely.
If you do it, your kids will help you be committed because they're like getting
They'll
paid.
know.
They won't let you forget.
Oh man, well, you're speaking to me because I've not been good about this. I need to start to be committed on a day. My kids are like, When's it going to happen? I keep talking about it. I need to. This is very helpful for me hearing this.
You get a rhythm going, because what we would do is once a month. We only usually had 3 kids on the payday system at the time. It cost us about $100 a month. So we take $100 out. We knew the denominations. We put it in the payday bank, and we'd go from there. It became a habit. But it's really it's parents being disciplined in their approach. And when you're disciplined in your approach, you get a calculated, great return. It just works.
Now, I can imagine a lot of people hearing $100 for 3 kids, but you're saying that this money is being used for, they're buying clothes with it, they're doing a lot of things with this money, right?
Yeah, starting on the payday system, we rarely even paid for their recreation expenses. Right. If they needed special things that they wanted, I'm trying to think of, it's not just toys, it's more even electronics and technology.
And see, as they got older, once they hit 16, they went outside the family economy because they got jobs. And so we stopped paying them. And I'll tell you a funny story. Joe comes to us. He was earning maximum of $10 a week until he got his first job. He gets his first job, comes home, and I've got a picture of him with his paycheck. He's smiling like crazy. He looks at his paycheck. 1 week as a bag boy, and he earns $70.
Yeah.
He looks at us, and he goes, "Mom and Dad, you have been ripping me off. What I earned in 1 week, it would have taken me 7 weeks to earn at home."
We said, "Yay! You know how to deal with your money now. This is an exciting moment. Let's take it to the bank and put it in your bank account."
The same kid went to a 4-year private college, paid for it himself, graduated. He says, "Dad, I am so broke. I am so broke." I said, "Joe, you have a net worth of $3,000. In my book, that puts you about $3,300 ahead of your peers."
Well, because we said all your peers are negative $30,000 because they're just going to start paying off their school loans now.
Yeah, you had a positive net worth when you graduated.
Yeah. Debbi, I'm curious because allowance can be very controversial in the blogosphere. I'm curious your thoughts on allowance.
Well, I don't like to just hand kids money. My daughter, she had to earn it because it's not just about spending, saving, and giving. The 4th element is working. You have to associate, that one equals the other, like everybody's been saying. And I was just going to elaborate, too. I had trouble with my daughter when she got to be a teenager where she wanted to get paid without doing the work. And basically, I put her under contract. She had to sign a contract, and basically I told her that if she didn't do the job, she'd get a warning. We'd talk about it. She might get written up once or twice, but like the 3rd strike, and she was done. And she's like, "Oh, that means I don't have to do the," because I told her I'd basically quote unquote fire her. And she said, "Oh, that means I don't have to do the work." I said, "No, that means you still do the work but don't get paid." So, and she signed that contract. I still have it in the drawer. She's 17 and has her own job now. But, I saved that because it was something that worked, for me because, they'll give you a hard time. And sometimes they'll say, "Well, I don't need the money." And at that age, maybe they don't need the money. And or whatever, but you still want them to work like they're doing, where you need to associate everything together. So you can call it whatever you want. I don't really care, but that's just a name for it. But just the principle and the concept is so much more important than what you call it. But as far as if you associate allowance with handing kids money, no, you can't just, that's where the entitlement factor comes from. It's like, "Oh, well, I made it through the week, now hand me my $10 or my $20 or in some cases, $50 or whatever."
Steve and Annette, Debbi brings up something really important, which is kids that have a difficulty with the chores or the work and fighting against the parents' will to follow through with these things. How would you recommend a parent going about with a strong-willed child who's like, "I don't want to do the chores"?
Both of us are so laid back.
Mild and meek.
Yeah. No, we raised probably, out of the 5 kids, we probably had 4 of them. They were all Okay, so here's what we did. This is, nobody talks about this. We had 4 points a day. First point was morning point. Get up, get dressed, make your bed, eat breakfast, without complaining. You earn the point if you do it all, but you do it with a good attitude. Second point was school. We homeschooled, but this works with anything. Do your schoolwork well without complaining. Are you seeing a trend here?
Yeah.
Chores well. Do it without complaining. So basically, if they did the job and they griped about it, they didn't get paid. So that, and we've shared this with people all around the country, and we have moms writing us saying, I cannot believe how peaceful our house has been since we started doing this.
But I also think there is something to, if you're starting it with older kids and they're having a rough time, and just like I said with the thrift store shopping, it may be the kind of thing where you have to do the chores with them.
Yep.
For a little while. You have to partner with them. You have to model, like we've all been talking about. You have to say, let's do it together. There were some people on a famous radio show that said the greatest form of play for a child was working with their parents. I would also say make sure you have age-appropriate chores and you have the tools that they need. So I'm going to get silly here, okay? We have 2 big dogs, and scooping dew is one of the things everybody has to do around. Well, when they're little, you can't give them a little hand shovel because nobody wants to touch that. Okay? So we found these little shovels. I forget what they're called, but they're about, I don't know, 3 feet, 2 feet, or 3 feet long.
They're child-sized.
But they're child size. And so you have to find the tools that can help your children be successful to accomplish the chores. When we divvied out the dishwasher job and the kids were little, we divided it up into 3 sections: top rack, bottom rack, and silverware. We got 3 kids covered on the dishwasher. But that meant we had dishes that could be thrown as frisbees and not break, okay? And we had to have places where they could easily access them and reach them. So forget about putting the dishes in an upper cupboard. I cleaned out a shelf of the pantry. We used plastic cups, Corelle dishes, because we wanted the kids to be successful at what they were doing. And we never, ever got upset over a broken dish. It was just a dish. We could go to the thrift store and find another one. Having the kids be eager and willing helpers was far more important than a broken dish.
I love that. Laura, Rod and Steve and Annette and Debbi have all been talking about just modeling good financial behavior at home, and something that you've said as well. I'm curious about, aside from allowance and working and teaching kids about money, what are some other ways that parents can model good financial behavior at home?
I would just say you've got to enjoy frugal living, and we do. But Rod, it sounds like you have some things you want to say, so you pop in and share.
Well, no, I think the same. It's, you model your behavior, and we try to engage our kids too. So if we're planning a vacation, we make it clear we have to have a budget. It's not going to happen tomorrow or even next week or next month. It might be several years of planning. We want them to know what it takes to be involved. But we engage them in that process. So same kind of issue. And you were talking about earning. I don't remember ever just having money given to me. I'm sure my parents did at some point at a date. I didn't have the savings, whatever. But it was always tied to earning. Our allowance was not just given. We had just almost the same chores you had. Take the dog for a walk, scoop up after him, whatever it was. So I had the little shovel too. But it's, you have to model that behavior, but engage them too, and give them things that make them think about it. One of the things I talk about is when I have grandkids. Long story, not enough time for the for the hangout today, but most people know it. But I have 3 granddaughters, and the youngest was maybe 4, probably 3, and she was in her car seat and her 2 sisters, and we went by a dairy, and they all 3 said, "Oh, can we get some ice cream?" And I said, well, maybe later we have to, save for it. And well, they found a quarter or something in the seat, and immediately was, "We have some money. Can we get some ice cream?" You save enough, and so it started this whole sort of routine. Every time they'd come over, it was they'd saved a little more money. Maybe we can go get some ice cream. And when they had enough, we went and got ice cream. But and then of course they got more than they could have afforded because Papa can do that. But it's it's just making it real, I think. is important. Tying them to what frugality means, and it's you can still get nice things like you said, but you have to plan for it and save for it and know what the trade-offs are going to be. And kids can understand that.
I agree with Rod, and I'm sitting here thinking about, we just got back from a vacation, and originally we were going to spend 3 days at Disney, and our youngest daughter, the company she was working for shut its doors, and she's been job hunting but hasn't gotten a job. And so this is Abby, and so we said, Abby, how can we help? Because we had a little agreement. We'd pay for part of it, they'd pay for part of it.
They were working for us at a speaking event.
Right. And so it got to the point we were kind of talking through the whole trip, and she said, well, I don't think we have enough for 3 days at Disney. I think we have enough for 2 days at Disney. Mm-hmm. So we said, okay, we'll do 2 days at Disney, but we'll do it after Memorial Day because the park is open till midnight after Memorial Day. So we'll be able to get more for our daily dollar if we do it that way. So it's that kind of thing where you're engaging your kids in the decision-making process. They're weighing in, and you're all working together to get the most out of what you have and to come up with solutions.
Right. The last time we did this trip, because we flew from Phoenix to Orlando several years ago, our kids were much younger, and we let them know a year in advance, and they were responsible for buying their tickets for Disney. And it took them a year to save, and each one of them did. It is great to let them have skin in the game, and it's great to let them know well in advance so they can work.
Debbi, Laura, Stephen, and Annette, I got to show you, there's a great conversation happening on Twitter as you guys are talking about the importance of allowance and using it in a way to help kids earn money. I just want to go over some tweets with you guys. Piggy Banker just tweeted out, one of the pros of allowance is teaching kids to manage their own money and learn to live within their means, exactly what you guys are saying. Brandon Wilson tweeted out, allowance is good, but don't confuse allowance for work tasks completed versus handing a kid money. Must help them establish a budget too.
Yes.
The American Consumer Credit Counseling says that just make sure they know that chores are not designed just for the sake of earning allowance. They need to be doing things as well, just being part of the family. Yes. And then Next Gen PF says pros, it gives students real-life experience managing their own money. I like monthly allowance to teach delayed gratification. You guys have got something going here, Stephen and Annette.
Well, we knew it'd be controversial.
Yeah, monthly allowance is. It's maybe not even for a teenager. Sorry, disagree.
I want to back up for one thing with the chores. Dave Ramsey is really good, and his book Smart Money, Smart Kids has helped a lot of people. But I think there's something about this idea of commission, paying a kid for each chore that makes it too hard on the parent, and you won't be able to maintain the system. And what we did is we realized we couldn't come up with chores for 5 kids every day. It was a brain drain. So we took a sheet of paper and we divided it into 5 columns, and we had age-appropriate chores written down under each child's name. And then across the top, we had the name of chores that everybody would do.
Like picking citrus and stacking firewood, depending on what season it was.
And the whole goal was to take it out of our heads, put it on paper, and then we could send the kids to the chore chart and say, okay, today you have 45 minutes to do chores, so go pick 2 chores that you want to do.
It was called shared control. So we knew what were the tasks that needed to be done around the house to keep the house running. So we had some say in the whole thing, but then they got to make the choices on what they wanted to accomplish on a daily basis. So it was a win-win for everybody.
But it's got to be taken out of your brain. We can't expect to be successful if every day we have to come up with new stuff. It's going to not be maintainable.
And I think our kids also knew, just from the whole atmosphere within our home, they just knew that there were things that we all did together just because they were part of the family. So they did have a daily chore point, but when we were getting ready for a holiday or an event, having a team of our kids was like having 5 adults to help us get ready. They were awesome workers. Teaching a strong work ethic, like Laura communicated right at the beginning, I think is a byproduct, a natural byproduct of our Money Smart Kids system. It's going to happen. All of our kids, when they worked their part-time jobs as teenagers, they're all older now, our home was the first home that got called when a shift needed to be covered. They wanted our kids first in to cover shifts.
I'm loving this dialogue, and you guys, I'm watching Twitter, and Chris Taylor, who's a journalist for Reuters, just tweeted about the pro of allowance. It says absolutely it's a critical training ground for learning how to handle money. I've never thought about how important allowance can be as a teaching tool, and you guys are all, what you guys are saying here is being just echoed on Twitter. Everyone's in agreement. They're all talking about ways that allowance can be used to help our kids learn about money. So thank you guys for talking about this. One of the other questions we're tweeting out now is, how can parents, and Laura, I'll ask you this first, how can parents who are financially struggling talk to their kids about money in a positive way? Because I know that can be very, very difficult. So I'm just wondering your thoughts for those parents.
Yeah, well, I think one of them is that if the financial difficulties are as a result of the parent's own mistake, and they can accept that, I think kids really appreciate your candor if you as the parent are willing to say, look, we made some mistakes, we've rethought that, and this is what we want to do, as opposed to sweeping them under the rug and hoping that nobody noticed. So I think that's one of the things is that because kids are smart. And they know when we're telling the truth. And I think owning up to some of the mistakes is good both for the parents and the kid.
Debbi, I'm just curious your thoughts also on this subject of, for parents that are financially struggling, how can they approach or talk about money in a way with their kids to help them get educated at the same time?
I think it's like Laura said. I mean, the key is being honest with yourself and with them, and parents have trouble, and when I say this, I get, people look at me like I have 10 heads sometimes when I say this, but it's okay to say to a kid, I was wrong. We did this, we were wrong, we've learned a way that wasn't right, even to be honest and saying, we just kind of went along with society, or we just kind of, maybe we weren't taught right. Don't blame, but just say, we just didn't quite do what we should have done, and now we've learned this better way, and we're going to try this, and we're going to try it, and really learn a different way. I mean, that's what I did. I mean, I had messed up royally, and I had to be honest with myself. I'm honest with every person that I coach, everybody who hears my story. It's all over Twitter, how bad I was messed up, but you tell them everything that you learn, and especially with your kids. And I always say this, if any of my mistakes will help my daughter, I have 5 kids and 4 grandchildren, if it'll help any of them to not make those same mistakes, all those mistakes were worth it. And I will tell them, hey, I did this wrong, this is what we did, this is what, you should do, this is a consequence to it. Really be open with them and have that conversation, because you don't want, especially your kids, I mean, I don't want even strangers going through this, but you don't want your kids going through what you went through if you're struggling and if you're stressing. And if you are, just try to get some help somewhere, whether it's a book. I mean, there's all these books. I mean, all of us have a book, I think, out there, and resources out there. There's stuff everywhere. They're all great. I mean, they're all good. There's not one better than the other. Just find a resource somewhere and turn it around with your children and for your children.
Oh, there's so much we could say right now.
If the number one most important tool that we found for us, it helped us pay off our home in 9 years. It helped us have a balance of $10,000 in the bank at all times, and it's basically what we talked about with the kids. It's a disciplined habit of doing a budget.
A written budget.
When we say budget, people hear all kinds of different things. So what I'm going to change the word, because budget in many people's minds connotates a restriction, a noose around the neck, and deprivation. And in my mind, when I hear the word budget, I think freedom, power, and knowledge that I can buy what I want. That's how I interpret it.
But you know what?
We meet twice a month on the 1st and the 15th of the month, and we've committed. We spend 2 hours doing our budget every 2 weeks, and 48 hours a year can revolutionize a family's finances. So if a family is struggling, number one, they've got to have a spending plan, a way to manage their income. Doesn't matter how much you earn, if you don't spend it wisely, you're never going to be able to lead your kids.
But this could be a topic for a whole nother day.
That's right.
So I'm sitting here thinking, if people are struggling, just like Debbie said, they need to look to the community for resources. There are food banks. There are, we have a produce rescue here called Produce on Wheels. You get 60 pounds of produce for $10.
But there's other programs like Bountiful Baskets all across the country.
There's always community resources. It's a matter of knowing them. In Phoenix, and I know in other places across the nation, there are charitable organizations for free prom dresses. So if prom was an issue, it doesn't have to be. We have medical clinics here, a couple of different medical clinics. So if you're having medical issues, so if people are struggling, I would say let's figure out why they're struggling and address the issues they're struggling with. If it's debt, it's not just debt. Debt isn't the issue. Why are they going into debt? Why are they struggling? But like I said, this is probably a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, and that could totally be another hangout we have in the future for sure, guys. Laura, I'm curious about, you know, for the teens that are watching this YouTube video, if their parents aren't talking with them about money, and they're very curious and they're wanting to learn more, what should they know about Jumpstart and ways to get educated in the classroom?
Sure. Well, you know, for teens who aren't hearing what they need to know at home, there are just so many places to get information, and I think a lot of folks have referenced just the plethora of resources available, and especially today in the internet age, you know, your libraries, the internet itself, and school. And one of the things that, you know, Jumpstart does a lot in teacher training, and I would encourage young people to think of their teachers not just for what they learn in their classrooms, but think of them as guides and mentors and reliable adults that they can go and ask questions of. And so especially if you do have a finance teacher or someone who is, you know, maybe a sponsor of a program, you know, like Life Smarts, or, you know, something like that. You have a resource at your school. You can go to your administrators and your teachers as advisors. But yeah, there's information everywhere, and I think that, though, I would have to say that the teens who are seeking out this information are already at an advantage just because they seek the information.
For sure.
You know, one of the themes I was hearing throughout today's chat, and we only have like 10 more minutes left, but I want to ask you about this because I've heard several of you mention this, and that is the importance of giving back. Not just taking in and saving money for yourself, but also giving. Debbie, you mentioned this. Stephen, Annette, you mentioned this. Why is giving also important as part of financial literacy? And maybe I'll start with Stephen and Annette on this one.
I think there's got to be a reason for your frugality. It's not just to survive. It's not even just to thrive.
It's not just to spend it on yourself.
Right.
Our kids learn from a young age that, and we didn't start with giving money. We started with them when they outgrew a toy or they outgrew clothes. We said, who else could use this? We wanted to start the idea of generosity.
Yes.
That we've been blessed. Even though we never earned a lot of money, we've been blessed. Can we give? And in the Middle East, there's the Dead Sea. It is one of the saltiest bodies of water, and the reason nothing grows in there is because all it does is take in, it never gives out. Things die when there's not a flow. And this is a natural flow of money from wherever we earn it to use for ourselves, but also to give to others. And it's normal in life, too.
And our kids have always been involved in clubs that also gave. Our daughter did 4-H. Our sons did Boy Scouts. They're all about giving back. And it's just, I think it's a natural part of life. When our youngest daughter, Abby, I'm sorry we talk about her, but she's just a cracker. 21, and she said, Mom, I've always wanted to support a Compassion International child. And so when we got married, I talked to Colin, who's her new husband, and he said, yes, we could do that. So we picked a country, and then we went to that country, and we found a child who had been waiting the longest to be adopted, and that's who we adopted. And they get letters from him, and they write to him, and it's just an amazing thing.
We've got a whole section in our book, The Money Smart Family System, on generosity and giving, because we do believe it's critical to financial health and wellness.
I love that. Debbi, do you want to share your thoughts on why you think generosity, teaching kids generosity early on, is very helpful for financial literacy?
Yeah, because for me, giving's an attitude. It's a kind of a reflection of your heart and who you are, and it can just really expand into so many other areas of your life. And I always say, when you think you're having a bad day, there's always somebody out there having a worse day than you. There's always people, and even if you're in need, even if you're out of a job and you only have $100 in the bank or whatever, there's somebody out there who has less than you, always. And so just, one of the ways to even pick yourself up, or, and it's not giving money always, it's giving time, it's giving a smile or a hug, or, if you see a single mom out there, offer to babysit for her, or you just, buy a cup of coffee. I mean, it can just be such small things. I mean, as a Southern Baptist and a Christian, I was taught, the whole 10% thing, and I do, believe in that. But even if you don't, it's not about just Christians or people of faith giving. It's really a human, thing to just, because if you're, like you said, if you're all about yourself, I mean, that makes you selfish. And selfishness will never bring you wealth. It'll never bring you financial freedom. It'll never really move you forward in life, even in your job and stuff. If you have a selfish attitude, you're not going to get very far in your job, And so it can become just even how you look at the small things, letting somebody through the door first, or opening a door for somebody. I mean, it's really just the small things, and it's not, a monetary, thing always.
This is wonderful. We only have a couple more minutes left, and I want to ask you guys each this question. Just a final tip for parents to teach their kids about money. And Laura, maybe we'll start with you on just a last-minute tip that you'd give a parent who wants to educate their children, wants to do the right thing, and just curious on your last-minute suggestions.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So my last-minute suggestion is to parents who are stressing out over, quote-unquote, teaching their kids. I think teach is a big word, and it freaks people out, and you think that you have to be an expert. And so I would say to them, talk to your kids, guide your kids, show your kids, and emphasize that this is something where it's not like, the professor lecturing to the student. It is something that you can experience together, that you don't have to necessarily be the expert. So talk to your kids, show them, guide them.
Steve and Annette, some last-minute tips for parents.
I would just say do something. Don't assume that they're going to learn financial education and literacy from school or from their friends or from the society that we live in. Be intentional is what I would say.
I just want to comment on Laura and Jumpstart Coalition, because we spoke at the Vermont Jumpstart Coalition and met some phenomenal teachers who are so into helping kids. And one of them said, in this economics class, every kid starts a business. And I'm going, wow, could we teach our kids, if we don't have money, could we help them start selling things on eBay? Could we do something like that where it's breaking the mold of what we think family finances is and help them be successful? And that's really what we do. We're raising adults who we want to stand financially independent from their parents, and there are resources. There's teachers, there's junior achievement, there's so many opportunities out there. As parents, we need to lead them to those opportunities and help them be successful.
Rod, do you have any last-minute tips for parents?
I don't know that I can add to that. I think Laura's right that when you talk about teaching, that's a scary concept that we really are just talking to our kids. I don't think I can say it any better, but we're the role models, and they watch everything that we do, and we shouldn't forget that. And down to money, how we spend it, how we talk about it with our spouse, how we manage what we have, how we spend what we have. So I think showing is as important as telling with the kids.
Thanks, Rod. And Debbi, any last-minute tips?
Don't make money taboo. Talk about it. Money's not a bad word. And the other thing I would say is kind of watch what you say about money around your kids, because they do pick up on everything that you say. And just a quick example is like if you say, well, we can't afford that. Well, what you probably mean, and maybe you can, but what you probably mean is it's not in the budget this week. make sure you use the right words. Make sure you use the good teaching words, so that it's not coming across. I mean, even if you are in a bad way or whatever, like put it in a positive way or a positive spin so that kids do not associate money as a bad thing, as a horrible thing. It's something that we need. It's always going to be in their life, and you don't want them to stress out about it. And, they are going to learn from you. If they see you stressed, they're going to think, oh, Lord, we're going to end up out in a box somewhere on the street, or something. And that's nowhere probably near what it is. But, and don't make it taboo. Talk about it, and just be open as you can with them.
Thanks, Debbie. Before we go to the credit chat question of the week, Steve and Annette, can you share how people can learn more about you and your guys' work?
So they can go to moneysmartfamily.com. That's our website, and we have 3 main areas of the website, and it's dealing with budget. That is the biggest area that people come to our website for. We also teach on groceries, and we've got a big section on teaching your kids about money. We've got lots of videos.
But our books are available everywhere, in brick-and-mortar bookstores and online, from all the online sellers. They can be found anywhere.
And in the library. So get the books. Do something, though. Do something.
Thank you, Steve and Annette. And Laura, where can others learn more about Jumpstart?
Well, easiest place to find us is on our website, www.jumpstart.org, and we would love to hear from you. I think the most important thing to know about Jumpstart is that we're not one organization. We're actually a coalition of many, many organizations and a network of state affiliates, and so our approach to this is doing it together.
Thanks, Laura. And Debbie, where can others learn about you?
You can go to debbiking.com, or you can go to abcsofpersonalfinance.com. Either one, they're kind of linked together. And this week I actually just launched a new product. It's a DIY product to help people who are a little bit ashamed about money get and kind of do it in the privacy of their own home. You get a book, a workbook, a couple of templates, and access to me for about 30 minutes. So it's a great thing, kind of, I think, what's needed, because there's a lot of shame out there and stuff, and hopefully it'll start that conversation with the kids as well.
Thank you, Debbie. We'll now end with our last section of today's Hangout, which is the credit chat question of the week. And Rod, the question is for you, what is Experian doing to help young people learn about credit?
Yeah, and I love this question. I guess I have to admit I wrote it. Experian has been involved in financial literacy and financial education for longer than I've been with the company, which is now almost 18 years. We were a founding member of the Jumpstart Coalition for Financial Literacy, so Laura's known me throughout my career too. And because we saw how important it was that young people learn about money and credit and how to manage it to be successful, because we want them to not have the problems that we've created for ourselves as adults. If they can avoid those problems, that's the best possible solution. So we work the Jumpstart Coalition. We last year awarded more than $800,000 in financial literacy grants that go to organizations who help teach students and young people and adults about financial subjects. So we invest very seriously in financial literacy programs. We're one of those grants, Laura, you'll correct me, it'll be 7th year now, was used to launch the Jumpstart Coalition Financial Educators Conference, and we have almost 300 teachers a year come to that conference, and specifically intended for them to get information that they can take away, use directly in the classroom with their kids. We've been a longtime supporter of the Life Smarts program operated by the National Consumers League, and it's a program that reaches hundreds of thousands of kids every year in schools and youth groups around the country, and is a competition-based teaching program around consumer knowledge, including financial literacy subjects. So a great opportunity there. Homeschooled, public schools, private schools, 4-H and other organizations are involved. So tremendously involved there. And we produce information and publish it on our website, making it available to everyone. So if you go to experian.com/education, you'll find, or exp.pn/finlit, thank you, Mike, and you'll find all sorts of information about credit reporting, credit scoring, and other subjects. But we are very committed to helping young people and consumers in general, adults as well, become more financially capable, and we invest in it both in terms of dollars and cents and in terms of people, and that's part of why we have these chats in Google Hangouts, is because it helps us engage directly with people and share information from experts and our partners like all of you. So a little bit of a self-serving but true, and I think it's one of the things that makes my job one of the best in the company, is we get to help people every day of all ages become more financially capable.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I feel like we've covered so much, and yet we have so much more to talk about. I hope we can all chat again very, very soon. This has been such a fun discussion. I want to let everyone know that if you'd like to learn more about our guests, would like to see links to other resources that were mentioned in today's Hangout, we're actually going to be posting this video as well as links and resources on the Experian blog. And the short URL is ex.pn/finlit. And I'll have links to go so you can learn more about Laura and Jumpstart, as well as Steve and Annette and the work that they're doing and their books, and also Debbi. And so I encourage you to go to ex.pn/finlit. And also, just to let you guys know, we have this chat every Wednesday live at 3 p.m. Eastern here on Twitter and on YouTube. And if you'd like to see an archive of past video chats, you'd like to see the podcast, infographics and slide shares from this chats, please join us. Just go to experian.com/creditchat. Next week, we're talking about pregnancy and what to expect financially when expecting. This should be a very good discussion. I have a lot to say because we have 2 kids, and boy, did I learn a lot about money and kids. So join us next Wednesday for that discussion. And last, I want to let you know that we love hearing from our community, and we love getting your guys' advice for upcoming topics and guests. So if you guys have suggestions, things you'd like to hear, people you'd like featured in this chat, please let us know. You can always tweet us, and our Twitter handle is Experian_US. And last, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get all of our upcoming videos and you'll never miss another credit chat. I want to thank everyone for talking and tweeting with us today, and look forward to seeing you all next week. Thanks, guys.
Great time.